Right, welcome to Human Interaction with the Coast Part 2. And what we're going to look at here is a case study. So just ignore this question for a minute. So what we looked at in Part 1 were the different methods, hard and soft methods for protecting the coastline. And the point of that was to examine how humans interfere with the coastal process of erosion, with the aim specifically of preventing erosion from happening and protecting the coastline. So this is typical of a Leaving Cert question that comes up, and again a really popular question. It's there nearly every second year. With reference to an example you have studied, describe and account for one way which humans attempt to influence or control natural processes. In your answer, refer to one of the following. Okay, so let's have a look at this. With a reference to an example you have studied. So all we've done so far is talked in general about hard methods and soft methods. Now I know we did mention that maybe they were in Curracloe or in Rosslare, but we didn't look at a specific area that's been affected by coastal interaction. So we have to look at one part of the coast that has been affected by human interaction. Now just take a look down here. Fluvial means rivers, we're not doing that. Marine means coast, and we haven't done mass movement. So you're always going to be looking at the marine processes option. The case study we're going to be looking at is Bull Island, because I would hope that most of you are familiar with it, and at least you can kind of picture what's going on there, but we'll go through it in a lot of detail. And to help you, this is drone footage of Bull Island that a friend of mine made back in the day when we were allowed out. It seems like ages ago now, and I'm looking forward to the day when we can go back out again. So I will let you watch this, and I'll probably talk about a few things. So you've got Howth in where we go. We've got Howth up here, we've got Sutton along here, we've got Bull Island here, and behind that then we've got Clontarf, and there's some nice images here from above. So off we go. That's Dublin Bay. These are the sand dunes at the back of Bull Island. There's the boats. There's more boats. Oh, nice image of Longshore Drift. Oh yes, the car park at the start. I think that's a groin. More boats. I should get a job in narration. I'm amazing at this. That is the actual end of the Bull Wall there. And this, oh, sugar. Okay, hang on. Can we go back there and pause it? Maybe if I play it and then just go there. Oh, no. Okay, let's do that again. Now I'll be ready for it this time. Pause. Right, what I want you to notice here is, so all of this in here is Dublin Bay. This is the North Bull Wall. This is the South Bull Wall. Okay, so any boats coming in and out into Dublin Harbour have to go through the gap created by the North Bull Wall and the South Bull Wall. What is going on with my arrows? And this is going to be really important later on. So because it's human interaction, these are man-made structures, the North Bull Wall and the South Bull Wall, and they have impacted on the processes of both erosion and deposition in Dublin Bay. So that's what we need to have a look at next. Okay, so this is an aerial view. So what I've just shown you there is the North Bull Wall and the South Bull Wall. That's what you've seen there. This entire part here is Bull Island. And basically what we're going to discover is that Bull Island only exists because the North Bull Wall and the South Bull Wall were built there. Okay, so that's really important. Humans built those walls. This changed the pattern of the movement of the water in and out of Dublin Bay, and as a result it caused North Bull Wall to build up and North Bull Island to build up there. Okay, why did this happen in the first place? So why did humans interfere? Basically, back in the 18th century, Dublin was a very important port. It had a big economy. There's a lot of trade. So there was ships constantly coming in and out with imports and exports because this was the main form of transport. However, if I go back here, you'll see that this area here is a little bit lighter, meaning that there's deposition. So there was a lot of deposition happening, and there was a sandbar across the mouth of the Liffey. So this is the Liffey here, and a sandbar was developing. So the sandbar, we can't see it because it's still beneath the waves. So when ships were coming in, often they got jammed on that sandbar there. And again, we're talking about 200 years ago. The sandbar meant that at low tide there was only 6 foot of water. Okay, so that's probably a foot bigger than me. So not an awful lot of water, very shallow. And it meant that ships couldn't pass, and they often got grounded, and a lot of cargo got lost. Sometimes the ships sunk as a result, and lives were lost. So the ships could not cross the sandbar except at high tide. This was a huge problem because it was affecting the imports and exports and making it difficult for people. What they tried to do initially was to dredge the mouth of the Liffey, so basically scraping the sediments off the seafloor. But those sediments continued to be deposited there because they were being carried by longshore drift. So it only helped temporarily, but it didn't solve the problem overall. This is just a radar image of the bottom of Dublin Bay, and what you're seeing there is an old wreck, okay, from back in the 18th century. And the reason why those wrecks were there was because they got stuck on the sandbar and basically sunk. So to deal with this problem, Dublin Port Authority built the South Bull Wall initially. So what they wanted to do was they built the South Bull Wall because they wanted to block deposition. So they didn't want longshore drift carrying material into Dublin Bay and depositing itself there. So they built the North Bull Wall at great expense, but basically this had little or no impact. So after they built the North Bull Wall and it had no impact, the South Bull Wall, they built that one first. Then they went and built the North Bull Wall, okay, and they thought that this was going to do the job. So this ran parallel, and if you're familiar with this wooden bridge, this is essentially the start of the North Bull Wall. The wall itself, so this was built by about 1824, so early in the 19th century. The wall runs for about 2.7 kilometres, and part of this wall is the Bull Bridge, which is the wooden bridge here. Now the Bull Bridge is important because it acts as a safety valve. So what that means is that the water can still go through on either side. And the danger was that if the water couldn't flow at some point because it's a solid wall further out here, then it might build up and it would just cause more erosion. So the Bull Wall lets additional water filter through so that it doesn't become too high. And you can see here because there's gaps in it, whereas out here it's solid. So the Bull Wall Bridge lets the water filter through and acts as a safety valve. Right, let's move on from that, and that's what you'll find at the bottom of the Bull Wall. So here's the South Bull Wall. Here, I don't want to draw on this, and here's the North Bull Wall. And this is usually the view you'll see when you're travelling in after your summer holidays, and you'll see this out the side of the plane. What happened then was that because these two walls were here, it blocked the entrance to the port. Okay, now is there a better angle I can do? Yeah, so because the two walls were built there, it acted as a filter. Now I'm going to go and draw this again afterwards because it's kind of hard to understand. So before they were here, the water could just wash in and out, okay? But now the water had to squeeze in through the two walls. And as a result of that, there's more force in the water going through here. So the best way I can explain this is if you have a litre of water in a jug and you have a litre of water in a water pistol, you know, one of those water guns that you have to pump. The water coming out of the water pistol is going to be more intense than the water pouring out of the jug because you're just pouring the water out of the jug. That's because it has to pass through a smaller gap, and it's the same here. So the same amount of water has to pass through a small gap, therefore it's a very strong force. And this results in something called tidal scouring. Right, so let's explain that then. So a pot scourer, have you heard of that? Is, hang on, here's one I googled earlier. If I can exit this PowerPoint. Oh no, can I not? Right, I'll go and get an image of it afterwards. Why can't I exit the PowerPoint? Oh, hang on, I can now. No. So, a pot scourer is one of these yolks, right? So, there are scrubby things that you need to get things that are bet onto pots off with. So, if you ever wash the dishes at home, you might have seen a pot scourer. They're often really wiry things and they're used to scrub and scrape. So the reason why this is called tidal scouring is because the sea is now got a huge amount of pressure because it's going through a smaller gap, and that amount of pressure means that at the bottom of the sea floor it's eroding away any sediments, and this is known as tidal scour. So one of the main effects of building the north and south walls was that tidal scouring cut a channel across the sandbar. So if you can picture underneath the water here, tidal scouring, or it's basically erosion of the sea floor that's removing sediment. So there's a really deep channel that goes all the way in here as a result of tidal scouring. And this has been very important because it means that big ships can get in and out. Before the walls were built, the depth of the harbour was about 1.8 metres, so let's call it 2 metres. Today it's 6 to 12 metres, depending on high tide or low tide. So at the very least it's 3 times deeper. Right, so tidal scouring is removing sand from the bottom of the ocean at this point here, creating a deep channel. But what's happening to that? And I need to go back here. Do I? No, gone too far. So the material is moved from here and it's, whoa, stop that. It's taken out to sea, okay? And there's extra sediment out here. And what happened is that sediment started to build up against the North Bull Wall. So the sand that was removed from the sandbar in Dublin Bay was carried out into the bay, it was picked up by currents, and then it was eventually deposited along the North Bull Wall. And then it built up and it got longer and longer over time. And this was the beginning of the formation of Bull Island. Currently the island is now 5 kilometres long and 1 kilometre wide at its widest point. There's a very well developed sand dune system running along the length of the island, and the beach is referred to as Dollymount Strand. So on the seaward side we've Dollymount. On the leeward side, remember we talked about those, there's a salt marsh and almost a lagoon. So when the tide is out, if you're driving along this road here, you'll often notice that it's very muddy, and what you're looking at there is the salt marsh. And this is the tip of Bull Island. Leeward side over here, salt marsh in here. And actually it's a really nice walk. You can go all the way down through the dunes, you can come out here, you can go back by the sea. And there's a little seal colony down here, so some days when you're out there you'll see loads of seals, which is very exciting, especially when there's little baby seals and they're very cute. There is Dollymount Strand, and the reason why there's a beach there is because longshore drift is active in the area. So longshore drift is going in this direction, okay? Carry material up, back down, up, back down, but they're constructive waves. So a combination of constructive waves and longshore drift have meant that there's a beach there and there's a dune system at the back. So this is the lagoon behind Bull Island, and the tide is out, and you'll just see the boats resting there on the salt marsh. The lagoon or the Bull Island or the salt marsh is really important because it is a wildlife sanctuary, and it's an important feeding ground for many birds. It's a protected area, so you'll often see a lot of wildlife photographers out here because you get birds stopping over on journeys. Why is that still there? Right, I've already explained tidal scouring. Now, there's an awful lot in that, so I'm going to go back and try and explain this a little bit more using a diagram. So let's bring this up here. Right. Now, I haven't done this before, so God knows how this is going to go, but let's give it a bash anyway. So if we have the coastline of Dublin, okay, so here we go, here's Dublin Bay, here, and then we're going out to Howth. Okay, that is brutal, but you get the idea, I hope. So we've got the Liffey running from town, and it opens up there, and we've got like Fairview. Sorry, this pen has gone very fat. Oh god. Don't know if this is going to work. Yeah, look, we'll give it a go. So Dublin Bay. I'm not gonna write because the pen is too kind of squat. So basically, before, change the colour, before they built the Bull Wall, there was a sandbar out here. That sandbar was very problematic because boats couldn't get over it. It meant, and you can't see the sandbar because it's beneath the waves, but it basically meant that the depth there was only about 1.2 metres, or 1.8 to about 2 metres. So the first thing they did was they built the South Bull Wall, coming out this way. South Bull Wall, that's about as good as we're going to get. But that didn't have a huge impact. So by 1824 they built the North Bull Wall, and part of that was the Bull Bridge. Okay. And remember, this lets the water go through to the other side. So what happened as a result of that was when the waves were trying to get in to Dublin Bay, they now had to funnel or squeeze in to a much smaller area. This resulted in tidal scarring. So this area here, the sediment was removed because the waves were under more pressure because they were funneling into a small space. So the sediment was removed and it was carried back out. Okay. Now why can't I draw down there? Okay. So the sediment was carried back out here by the waves and by the different currents. That sediment ended up building up against the North Bull Wall, and eventually it built up until it was above sea level, and over time it built up and up and up to form Bull Island. Okay, so now we have Bull Island being built there. Behind there we have a area that is slightly cut off from the sea. So this then became a salt marsh. We have Dollymount Beach at the front on the seaward side, and we have some sand dunes at the back of the beach here. Now you can't see that because I did it in the same colour. Let's just do the sand dunes in green because they're covered in marram grass. So you have the sand dunes at the back. This just might be the best diagram I've ever drawn. I'm going to take a photo of this. Okay, I hope that explains the processes a little bit better. It is a difficult one to do when I can't explain it in class, but I really want you to read carefully through the handout. Actually, I think I will go through that now. So if you can get the booklet and go to page 42 in it. So it starts there at 10.1, human interaction with coastal processes. Case study is Dublin Bay. Now the processes that are being interfered with here, they're actually all three processes. Process of deposition is occurring because it's occurring, let's just change the colour pen again. Deposition is occurring because all of this was deposited. Transportation is being affected because the sediment is being transported out. And erosion is occurring because of tidal scarring. So the building of the two Bull Walls have actually affected all three processes in Bull Island. Okay, so if you take a look at the map there on page 42, North Bull Island, North Bull Wall and South Bull Wall are all identified. So Dublin Bay is your case study. So if you get the question that I showed you at the very start, basically your first sentence is, an area that I've studied that's affected by human interaction is Dublin Bay. So there's interference with the natural processes, deposition and erosion as a result of human activity, and it has had both positive and negative effects on the area. So the historical interference. So this just means what humans did in the past. In the late 18th century, Dublin was a thriving city with a growing economy, but the increase in trade was putting a lot of pressure on the port facilities. For centuries, the shallowness of the water and the sandbank at the entrance to Dublin port caused a huge problem for ships. Longshore drift from the south resulted in sand and silt. Silt is just very small material. It's basically smaller particle size. It's much finer particle size than sand, and we talked about that when we did geoecology. So sand and silt were carried across Dublin Bay, and often the port became blocked and a sandbar built up. The sandbar at the mouth of the Liffey meant that there was only 2 feet of water at low tide. Actually, change that to 6 feet of water. Change that to 1.8 metres. So where it says 6 feet, just scribble it out and write 1.8 metres. And the reason for that is I just want consistency, because across the notes you'll see in a minute. So this led to loss of lives, ships and cargo in Dublin Bay, as the ships were not able to cross the bar at high tide. The authorities tried to prevent the build-up of silt by dredging the mouth of the Liffey. So dredging basically just means scooping sediments from the sea floor, but it did not solve the issue. To deal with the problem, the South and North Bull walls were built between 1818 and 1824 by the Port Authority. These 2 walls then would change the patterns of sea currents and deposition in Dublin Bay. The Great South Wall was built first, but this in itself had little impact. It was then suggested that a second wall be built on the northern bank of the river that would run parallel to the Great South Wall. Work began in 1819, finished in 1824. And this was the North Bull Wall. So this stretches for 2.74 kilometres. Part of this is the Bull Bridge, and the purpose of this is to act as a safety valve to prevent damage to the wall from the full force of the tide. So basically, when there's high tide or stormy weather, it lets some of the water escape. This brought about an immediate positive effect for ships entering and exiting the harbour. So this is very important. One of the main effects was tidal scouring occurred between the north and south walls, and this cut a channel across the sandbar and deepened the water. And this is the definition of tidal scouring, this next sentence. So tidal scour is seafloor erosion caused by strong currents. It results in the removal of sediment and the formation of channels. In this case, scouring occurred as the tide has to funnel through the gap between the walls. Before the walls were built, the depth of the harbour was 1.8 metres, and that's why I wanted you to change the earlier figure, so just we're not getting confused. Today it's 6 to 12 metres. The sand that was moved from the bar was carried further out into the bay, where it was picked up by currents and eventually deposited on the North Bull bank, and this was the beginning of Bull Island. The island is now 5 kilometres long and 1 kilometre wide. There's a well-developed sand dune system running along the length of the island. Dollymount Strand is on the seaward side, and on the side furthest from the sea, the leeward side, there's a salt marsh and a lagoon. In general, this has been very positive. Okay, these next bits aren't overly useful, but sure, look, we'll go through it. So the Sands bit has many recreational uses. There's 2 golf courses there, the Royal Dublin Golf Club and St Anne's. The salt marshes and mudflats have built up on the landward side, or the leeward side I should have written, of the spit. These have become important feeding grounds for birds, and it's a wildlife sanctuary. It attracts many bird watchers and photographers. It's an internationally important site for its biodiversity, including the presence of several rare plants. It is a visitor and interpretive centre, and the beach at Dollymount is a popular beach and provides recreational activities such as walking, jogging and kite surfing. In fact, they have a kite surfing contest there every year. There's several yachting and water sports clubs that use the area, including the Sea Scouts, and both the Strand and the North Bull Wall are used for angling. That's fishing. Modern activities, so negative interaction. So this bit is just saying that today there has been a problem of sand dune erosion because so many people use Bull Island for leisure activities. So many people visit Bull Island for recreational and leisure activities. This is causing erosion of the sand dunes in the following way. Cars driving on the beach compact the sand. This means that it's more difficult for the wind to remove it and carry it onto the sand dunes. This slows down the natural growth of the dune system. Now that's not allowed to happen anymore. Have I written that further on? Yeah, you're not allowed to drive your car. Like back in the day, this used to be where all the learner drivers went to learn how to drive. People walking over the dunes, damaging the marram grass. The marram grass helps to hold the dunes together. If it's removed, it will result in erosion of the dunes. I'm having trouble turning the page. What have they done? Signs and warnings have been put up. There's a nature warden. Car-free zones have been set up, so 80% of the beach is restricted to cars. Use of motorised vehicles such as quad bikes are prohibited. Yeah, look, to be honest with you, we don't really need to know the negative and positives, but we'll have a look at that when we look at the essay question. Okay, I really just want you to take your time reading through that and go through the PowerPoint at the same time. And then once you've done that, I want you to take a look at page 44 and I want you to attempt this. Now, if you wouldn't mind doing this on a separate page, because I will give you the correct answers and I prefer you to have those written in there. But I just want you to jot down for each one, for erosion, deposition and transportation, how you think the building of the bull walls have affected them. So where it says summarise how human activities have impacted on coastal processes at Dublin Bay, those human activities are mostly the building of the bull walls. Okay, you could possibly include human activities as being destroying the sand dunes, etc. But I just want you to think about how each of those processes has been affected by the North Bull Wall and the South Bull Wall having been built. Please write your answers on a separate sheet of paper. Oh, Jenny, I got it right. And then I will post the correct answers and you'll write those into page 44. Okay, any questions on this one, please let me know. Like I say, it is kind of a difficult one.